Good morning and thank you for joining me. This is the Australasian Institute of Marine Surveyors webinar series. I'd like to thank our guest speaker today, Nathan Clark, who is the Director of SEAL Marine Management and Consultancy. He is a member of AIMS and gave his time to have a discussion around vessel building quality. The discussion is quite important given our recent announcement of a partnership with Boating Industry Australia looking at the issue of vessel safety. I'm happy to be sharing this on our public platform. If you'd like to find out more about the Institute, undertake one of our courses, or find a surveyor, I'll leave those links in the webinar description below. And to promote our biennial conference, I'll also leave a link in the podcast description below. I hope you have a great day, rest of your week. But more importantly, I'd like to hand over to Nathan to start us on today's webinar.
G'day everyone, welcome to the next edition of the AIMS webinar series. My name is Eric Perez, the CEO of the Institute. Thank you for joining us again. My guest today is Nathan Clark. Nathan, how are you, mate?
I'm well, thank you. Good morning.
Thank you for coming along. So we've had a discussion offline around getting this webinar going for a little while now, and we're looking at basically the quality of vessel build at the moment, and I've got a series of questions here to put to you. But before we kick things off, can you give us a bit of a background to yourself, mate?
Yeah, absolutely. So my predominant background has come from seafaring, ship's officer and captain, and then I transferred across after a lot of exposure to classification surveys. Have transferred across to running a company where we deal with surveying and project management.
What are you seeing in broad terms with respect to recreational vessel build quality?
It's a bit of a mixed bag because it's such a global market, and there's a lot of different manufacturers of all sort of manners, types, and sizes of vessels currently in the marketplace. You're getting some very, very high quality products being put to marketplace by some key players, and then there's a bit of a subsect where the manufacturing procedures and protocols are in place, but there seems to be a bit of a void and a bit of a gap in the quality control sectors. What we're seeing is that quality control concern is then rolling down through into poor product delivery for the end user or the buyer. There's also quite a few new technologies coming through, trends which really we haven't had the exposure to on the ground to see how these items are going to sort of stand up in long term. And a pretty good example of that is some of the higher end vessels coming in from Europe, which have the fold down gunnels and top sides and lots of moving parts, which are sort of, they're tied back into the structure seemingly, but we haven't really had the longevity in the product to see how those areas hold up in terms of structural integrity and overall sort of wear and tear. So it's a bit of a pretty much a mixed bag as to what we're seeing there, but there are unfortunately quite a number of products which are hitting the Australian marketplace, where there are a number of pretty evident quality control deficiencies coming through, which then leads you to think, okay, if we've got that on the surface, it's not being maintained or captured at source of production, what other issues could possibly be lying under the surface, so to speak, further down the track?
The long game when it comes to build. So if you're buying your vessel new, and we'll take it as stated by you that yes, there might be some things here that might manifest down the track. Is that a standard concern when you're looking at the building of vessels, that you're not going to see potential problems for a longer period of time once they're on the water, and hence there's always going to be a question mark of when things will go not well in the purchase of a vessel?
You do have that underlying concern. I think we probably sort of sit into two categories. One is with the new styles and technologies being developed. Naturally, companies do spend an awful lot of time and money in doing R&D to see where and how the product's going to align. But that doesn't always transpire across into real world use and sort of wear. Being new designs, it's simply an unproven entity. So, if we take, for example, the fold down sides for the vessels, that's only really sort of hit popular stakes in the past 3 to 4 years. Not really long enough to see how it's going to fare and stand up for ongoing and long-term componentry of the boat. In terms of sort of short-term and sort of near-sighted issues, really sort of looping back to the fact that if vessels are coming from the factory with areas of default which don't get tended to by the manufacturer in a quality control component, you do very much wonder what else is going on beneath the skin. Had a very good example. I've got a client in Brisbane who owns a couple of boats. They are sister boats. They came off the production line one after the other in numbered sequence. They were fully kitted up, exactly the same specifications by the client from the manufacturer. They'll put them in the water, and one boat had a 5-degree list to starboard. So these are identical make, models, equipment load, absolutely everything is 100% the same. And it leads back to either there's something has gone wrong in the fiberglass laminate part of the build. So whether there's been excess resin on one vessel compared to the other, one side compared to the other, we don't know. But the unfortunate thing we're seeing there is the manufacturers effectively have washed their hands of it and turned around and said, well, that's not our problem.
That's a nice segue into the next area that I've got here, Nathan, is around issues for marine surveyors as a result of poor bills. And you've given some hints as to what those things might be, but maybe give us your top 5 charting issues for marine surveyors in this space.
Something I'm seeing an awful lot is, and whilst it may on the surface seem quite superficial, is, for example, deck fittings and fixtures, and in particular mooring line cleats. So we had, again, I was asked to go and inspect a boat which is, let's say, probably under 8 months old. And at the time of inspection, from memory, I'd say we're probably looking at they had 8 cleats on there, and probably 6 of those were showing signs of corrosion. When we delved a bit deeper, all the fixings had completely corroded. So whilst this itself is not going to jeopardize the safety of the vessel from an overall perspective, so you're not going to sink from a rusting cleat or deck fixture, what it does, it brings into other safety concerns and issues there, and that is if that particular cleat was to part or to give way whilst it's under load in a berthing scenario, then you do go down the roads of potential other issues and hazards in that regard there. So those sort of, I guess, seemingly superficial topside fixtures really are, they're showing their faces pretty quickly there. We're seeing, again, in the fixtures and fittings sector, we've picked up a number of vessels where the anchoring and bowsprit arrangements, whilst on paper are more than adequate to do the job in terms of lift power and ratio and weight and anchor size. But again, back to the fixtures and the fittings, there's not enough strong backing plates. The quality of the fittings is starting to corrode very early in its life cycle. So again, not enough to sink a boat, but certainly definitely enough to cause concerns on the safety factor. And whilst you can happily look at it and you go, oh, there's a bit of a rust stain going on there, when you start to delve deeper, that's when the sort of heart and soul is really starting to show up there. Engine room cleanliness and tidiness from certain manufacturers, you would assume that they come spick and span and looking absolutely showroom perfect. We've had a couple of vessels where there's still been rags in bilge and firefighting lines, and just sort of general remnants from the shipbuilding phases there. So again, whilst that's not necessarily a manufacturing failure there, it is very much a major issue, especially again, given the boat has come brand new from a factory. The buyers and the owners have every right to assume that it's going to be perfectly operational.
For the purposes of this conversation, you've shared with me a video and a thermal image that I'd like to talk to. I'd like to get you to talk to. Sorry. So,
Yep.
I will now switch over to. We'll start with the video. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll go to share this. All right. So you should be seeing now on the screen a video here. So I'll start this, and if you want to walk through what we're seeing and give us a bit of a play-by-play, that would be good. So I'll get it started.
So what we've got here, I was called in to assist an owner who was they've got there's a 45-foot power catamaran, and it had developed quite a substantial list toward the back, starboard aft corner of the boat there, and they couldn't for the life of themselves work out what was going on. And this particular vessel here has a void space underneath that swim platform there. So it's a completely enclosed area with no access, no internal ways to inspect the space. So we came along and we put the thermal imaging camera across the transom there, the swim pod. And what we found out is that the entire space was holding approximately 200 litres of water. So once we'd identified that we had a lot of moisture in there, we got the ship rights to drill some holes. And what you're seeing there is the water coming out of that space. Now, that particular vessel, that was a fault from the manufacturer. So where we have the rubbing strip, which is at deck height there, that is screwed into place at the factory. And this particular vessel here, what had happened is they had misaligned the rubbing strip after they'd made the initial fixing points. And rather than actually go back and infill where they had the holes put in error, they left them open and put the rubbing strip into place and carry on going. So what has happened here is every time had a following sea or the vessel has shipped water onto the back deck there, water has been taken into the void space directly underneath where the hull penetration has been made. So this vessel here was about 2 years old. So we have to safely assume that she's been holding water in that space for about that sort of 2-year period. And the owners have in turn actually decided to take the case back to the manufacturer to have the damage repairs. What you'll see when you flick across the thermal image, we actually have then got some damage within the aft structure as well. So it's unfortunately not turned out to be a particularly positive experience for the owner having bought this boat.
No, it doesn't seem that way. I will now share the thermal imaging that you provided us.
This is the thermal scan from the back of the boat we're just looking at, and you can see a very dark area to just off of the center line there. So that's actually where the whole structure itself is retaining moisture. So we definitely got water damage within the structure of the vessel there. So we utilize the thermal scanning on pretty much most of our surveys if requested. Definitely on fiberglass and composite hulls because it allows us to find the sort of underlying issues. And these are all provided to the owner who, as we mentioned a moment ago, is taking the case back to the manufacturer.
Sure. And just looking at this image, and I claim no expertise in thermal imaging, but that purple spot just sort of in the center there, that would need replacing or
yeah. So
a rebuild there.
Yeah, what the thermal scans do is they detect anomalies. We then apply our knowledge of hull structures and some common sense to come to a decision as to, or a conclusion rather, as to what we're looking at. So in this particular case here, we've got the fact that we know the water's been holding at least 200 litres in there for about 2 years, give or take. We know that there's breaches in the structure with the holes which are drilled through and not treated. So what we are looking at there is water has over the time of that 2 year period made its way down into the actual structure and the laminate layout scheduling.
Oh, okay. So that purple, that really dark purple patch, and one immediately to its left,
Yep,
is a wear and tear in the actual
that's
material.
damage to the structure caused by the ingress of water.
Oh, okay. Okay, I see.
So water has made its way into that void space, but also then it's made its way down in between the resin and the fibers of the fiberglass hull.
Yeah, right. Okay. And so this can then this form part of the report back to the client around the condition of the vessel.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like anything, it's a non-destructive test, so you can never hand on heart 100% say that's what it is. But given the circumstances and what's going on, we are 99.9% sure in that particular scenario there that that's what has occurred.
Yeah, and it's interesting to be able to use these technologies to back a view that you have while you're doing the survey, because without it, I guess there's no way to know the extent of the damage without that kind of thermal imaging.
No, you can get an indication. Audible tests, you can pick up a difference in the acoustic returns. But what we find is by using thermal imaging, we can fine tune the area of concern. But it also allows us to give a tangible to the owners and to insurance companies, depending on what sort of survey is being conducted, or if we're doing a damage report. So it allows us to actually quantify what we believe is going on, without still the need for destruction or destructive testing. Sorry. In that scenario there, we were 100% on the money, because as soon as we drilled through into the transom there, water was flooding out. So it does go to, for us, it really does help to quantify what's going on within the hull or the structure at the time. So it makes it very easy for us to stand there and confidently make an assessment as to what's going on.
So I'll get you to take off your marine surveyor hat and put on a recreational vessel owner sort of buyer hat on, if I may. From a vessel safety perspective, what's your views here around the quality or the poorer quality of bills that you're seeing? And I'll put some context around why I'm asking this. Is vessel safety, sorry, is the core of what the report goes to, in some senses, that if this thing is not seaworthy, and I'm not going to get into the conversation around how you define seaworthiness, because this would be a conversation that would probably never end. But the issue around vessel safety is at the core of what we do when we're doing these reports, whether we're saying that out aloud or not. It is a huge component of this, because I would assume any marine surveyor worth their salt would not make an assessment there is not an issue here on that particular vessel that we just saw, that there's an issue here that the owner needs to address. Now, if it wasn't, or if the owner chose to ignore it, then there is a significant risk to people on that vessel down the track. We might not be able to quantify when that would happen, but if this thing is taking on water, then that's not a good thing if you're out in the deep water, if you are out away from the coastline, in terms of if there's an incident, there's going to be some huge implications for that. So back to the question, how does the poor boat build impact vessel safety sort of going forward?
Look, it can have monumental impact. There's absolutely no two ways about it. I mean, that particular boat there, the customer had spent well in excess of 1.5, $1.6 million for that boat. So number one, there's a financial impact to some greater or lesser extent. That particular model there, those rear pods are actually designed for the European market to be a collision area. So they're actually a sacrificial pod. So in terms of a safety perspective, that particular model of and brand of boat, they're sort of designed that you can have that area sort of wasted to a certain degree. Still doesn't bode well for the fact that you can have structural damage sort of emanating from there. That being said, we have got another client down in Sydney who's bought a boat and they had plastic through hull fittings. These actually have been incorrectly installed by the manufacturer, and it's gotten that bad that quickly that if effectively the boat has broken in half. So it hasn't clean snapped in half, but it has the keel area of the boat around the fittings has given way, and the boat borderline sank. So yeah, to answer your question, it can have a massive impact. And unfortunately, a lot of these areas for the layperson or the non-technically minded or the time poor person, sort of out of sight, out of mind parts of a boat, which if they're not up to scratch, can have the potential to go very, very wrong. And it may not be this week nor next week. It could be next year, 5 years. But if you have those inherent failings and faults from production, and they're not either known, addressed, or rectified, then it can go wrong. Absolutely.
So to close the loop, as it were, ways to address poor build quality. So you've had the experience of excellent build quality and not so great build quality, and we won't name particular manufacturers here. We want to avoid potential legal entanglements. But from a marine surveyor perspective, at the very least, ways to address poor build quality. So if you had the ability to wish the system to look better, what would that look like?
From a surveyor's perspective or from a buyer's perspective?
Give me both, if you can.
Okay, I think from a buyer's perspective, it's reasonably straightforward. When you're looking at buying a boat, use, I hate to say, some common sense. Look towards the long-standing production companies, the long-standing boat building firms. Ask a couple of very basic questions. Now, what standards of building have these boats been applied to? Are they being built to the Australian small craft regulations if they fall into that size category? Have they been built to the American Boat and Yacht Council, or are they built to the CE standards? So I think making sure it is built to an appropriate standard for the type of boat and the size of boat that you are looking at purchasing is a very, very good starting point. That in itself should theoretically mean you're heading down the right track. The internet is a fantastic research tool. So there's lots of forums. So if you're looking at buying a boat, hop online, delve into some of the owners clubs forums, and just sort of see what sort of problems are occurring with that particular make and model that that the buyer is considering. Everything pops up on the internet somewhere or other if there is an issue, as we know. So it's actually a pretty good research tool there to, I guess, just to reinforce a bit of peace of mind as to what you're looking at. Another good one I think is quite handy, and people don't tend to do it because it does involve spending more money. But if someone does go out and buy a boat, is within the first of 12 to 18 months, or more importantly, before any warranty periods are up, is have it surveyed by a qualified surveyor. That way we can have a look at it and, again, delve deeper into some of the more unseen parts from an owner's perspective and potentially help them by catching or identifying any issues that might be there so they can refer those back before the warranty periods come to an end. So hopefully get the manufacturers to resolve any issues before they fall out of warranty and become a big expenditure for the owner. From a surveyor's point of view, I find, again, doing research on the particular models is immensely helpful. So if we get called in to do a survey on a boat, which I've not come across before, I'll actually spend time before the survey doing some online research into that particular make, model, and right down to sort of the year of manufacture as well, just to see if there are any sort of inherent problems that do pop up with those, to give us a bit of a heads up as to areas we should possibly be paying close attention to. I find for me that sort of, it really helps us to hone in and back up a comprehensive survey with the technologies that we use, and then give ourselves a bit more of a head start. So if we know that a particular vessel does have an inherent problem, we can address that with a bit more of a magnifying glass and have a much closer look at it.
Yeah, words of wisdom, Nathan. Look, this has been great, and it's the start of a conversation. I'm sure we're going to delve deeper into some elements of this with further industry workshops and/or contributions to ship shape, which are always appreciated, mate. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.